Let me begin by, just taking from your statement which you just made. India's presidency is a powerful reminder that when the international community comes together to solve global problems, much can be accomplished. We saw the declaration
Yep.
yesterday come out. What, according to you, is the key takeaway from this G20?
Let me most sincerely congratulate India for the presidency. In a very challenging time, India brought the G20 together, but did more than that. It invited countries and international organizations, so we can say the whole world came together. The very first important achievement is the African Union being accepted in the G20. This gives a whole continent voice. And I think Prime Minister Modi and the rest of the G20 did the right thing to welcome that voice. Secondly, the Indian presidency brought up ambition on climate action. And what I saw in the room when this discussion was going on was a much stronger sense of urgency to move. Third, on finance, the Indian presidency advanced the reform of multilateral development banks and the World Bank and brought the role of these institutions as mobilizers of private finance much more on focus. Four, we have seen the Indian presidency rallying everybody that made pledges for on-lending special drawing rights through the IMF to vulnerable middle-income countries and low-income countries to fruition. It started with the Italian presidency, moved to the Indonesian presidency, and now what was a pledge is materializing. That means more resources for developing countries. I'm five on that. India genuinely mobilized in a very thoughtful way public, private sector, creditors, borrowers to face the tremendous challenge a build-up of debt presents. We co-chair with India and the World Bank the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable. It is very important to bring traditional creditors, Paris Club, new creditors, China, India, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, private sector, finance, and the voice of the borrowers. So together we can identify pathway for action, and it has been a genuine success of the presidency. And I want to finish with two policy areas, crypto, and now we have a roadmap that the IMF and FSB put together to bring the world to a better place with regard to crypto. And last but definitely not least, the Indian presidency mobilized support around digital infrastructure, public digital infrastructure. It demonstrated how it works here and excited others to tap into it. So I look at the presidency, it is not just that we got finally joint statement, but that in the statement there is action. So there are the bones and there is meat on them.
So, this outcome that we saw from the summit, which has emerged, does it sort of bring the climate action plan, give it the much needed urgency to act, and especially on the funding part?
I do believe so. The agreement in the room on the urgency of both mitigation and adaptation, on the importance to provide more financial resources to the poorer countries, that are most dramatically impacted, as well as the recognition that public money need to be used wisely to also bring private money on scale. Of course, there will be a lot more work to be done on specific ideas that have been tabled during the Indian presidency. For example, Prime Minister Modi called for green credits to be more widely utilized. At the IMF, we agree that we need urgently strong incentives for decarbonization and adaptation, both green subsidies, green credits, and also carbon price. Because if carbon is not priced, then the pressure on producers and consumers to move faster is not going to be strong enough.
So climate change, we've seen, even in India, we've seen some of the impact in terms
Mm.
of, unseasonal
Yep.
rains and
Yep.
so on. Basically on farm productivity, it's been a true impact, which is obviously going to have some impact on food inflation going forward. So do you see this as a growing worry going forward?
Oh, certainly, yes. What we see very clearly is that the frequency and intensity of weather events has increased dramatically, and the predictability of the seasons and how you can plan agricultural production is no more what it used to be. What that requires is three actions. One, data. We need to have much more credible data so uh, farmers can adjust to weather patterns more effectively. Two, we need more resilient crops, resilient to floods, resilient to heat. Three, we need to utilize better what we produce. Um, we produce in many places twice as much as we consume. Half goes into waste, food waste, or lack of transportation and facilities to conserve what we have got. All of this requires serious investment, and it also requires cooperation, sharing experience, learning from each other. Because the world we are getting into, one of more severe, more frequent climate shocks, is not going to forgive us if we are slow to adapt.
There's also this growing concern about countries imposing export restrictions on food products. What is your take?
It is really disheartening to see what has happened over the last years in terms of trade restrictions overall. Uh, in the last year since the pandemic, they tripled. If you go a little bit back, further back, they increased six times. That's not good for anybody because when we impose restrictions, it's a slippery slope, and then it's like opening up a Pandora box of protectionism. The genie comes out, we can't put it back. When it comes to restrictions on food items, there are circumstances in which, for security reasons, a country may need to impose a restriction, but it should be really well motivated and it should be temporary. I really urge all of us to think about the consequences of creating a world in which solidarity takes a back seat. A world of more shocks, and this is the world we are, means we have to work more with each other, help each other. And we are going in the exactly opposite direction.
When you look at the world right now, in terms, and if you look at the global economy, there are a lot of concerns which are emanating What is your outlook on and how do you see the economy going forward?
Well, it is on the positive side remarkable how resilient the world economy has proven to be under the unthinkable events, the COVID, the war. We were worried that the consequences can be even more severe, but the recovery is slow and uneven. When we look at the world, only the United States has fully recovered their pre-COVID trend. Eurozone 2% below, emerging markets 5% below, low-income countries 6-7% below. This is scary. These are trillions of dollars we lost. It has significant implications. And then on top of it, growth is projected to be slow over the next years. So anemic growth with big scarring means that pain on people, on businesses, is not going to be easy to elevate. When we look at the world, high inflation in many places, it has been going down, not fast enough, many countries, high interest rates, currency depreciation in many emerging markets, high level of debt. It is a difficult, complex picture. How can we get out of it? Well, let the economies grow. What is the most powerful engine of growth? Trade. So, working towards more open and integrated economies is in everybody's interest.
So in US, the interest rates will remain high for a long time. We saw a banking crisis there, which was empty. But going forward, do you see, are there apprehensions of such a crisis sort of showing up again, and could there be a contagion effect?
Right. Well, the good news is that after the global financial crisis, the banking system has really been reinforced. And the benefit of it came during COVID. This spring, when there was a shake-up, we saw that authorities are very fast to take action. And this action, both in the United States and Switzerland, was very effective. There is no serious threat of financial crisis, but we need to remember that fighting inflation means higher interest rates, and now we know they will be higher for longer. Inevitably, there would be negative impact on businesses. We are already seeing some increase in non-performing loans. Will the financial system sustain that? My confidence is high because I have seen at the start of COVID coordination in monetary policy, fiscal policy, when inflation hit, very rapid coordination of monetary policy. I expect this will continue in the future. We learned a lesson from the global financial crisis to be vigilant. One space where we are paying more attention is the non-banking financial institutions to make sure that there is no accumulation of problems that could then cause negative impact elsewhere.
Could there be a risk for a bigger risk for emerging economies with a dollar, stronger dollar? Do you see a wider risk sort of emanating out of it?
Of course, when there is a high interest rate environment in the United States, when there is concern about the world economy, there is flight to safety, and that leads to a stronger dollar. What we have seen over the last 2 decades is that emerging markets have built reserves. This is costly, but it is helpful. And when we look at the foreign reserves, most emerging markets with sound fundamentals, like India, like Brazil, they also have strong reserve positions China has particularly strong reserve positions, but China is not the only one. Where is the problem? The problem is in vulnerable emerging markets and low income countries. Their reserves are a tiny fraction. In fact, 100 countries, small island economies, low income countries, 100 countries hold only 1.5% of the total global reserves. For these countries, when the dollar is strong, their economies are in a very risky place. And for these countries, there is an IMF. We have seen huge increase in demand for IMF programs. We are there for our members. We are supporting them at this difficult time.
China is being seen as a growing worry. You also mentioned this, and some experts have said it's another Lehman moment for the global economy. How do you see the situation?
China started recovering in the first quarter quite strongly, and then this recovery lost momentum, mostly because of two reasons: the property sector and local government debt. These factors are holding the Chinese recovery. There is also the impact of exogenous external factors. China does have policy space. China can do more to support its economy. And from what we see, they are now tapping into some of this policy space. They have decreased the interest rates, eased the financial support for the property sector, lowered the requirements for bank apartment in terms of what you put down. We are encouraging China to carefully monitor the situation and use more of this fiscal space, but directly differently, rather than using it as China did in the past in infrastructure to prop up private consumption more.
But how do you see India's economy going forward? What's your outlook on India? And if you especially take, Indian Prime Minister's resolve that the country should become a developed nation by 2047.
Look, what we have seen over the last years in India is an ability to deal with very difficult challenges effectively. When COVID hit, the country did suffer, but very quickly put in place massive vaccination campaign and managed to come out to recover from that shock to a point that we now see indeed the bright spot on the gloomy horizon I described before. There are two very strong advantages for India. The first one is youthful population. That brings dynamism in the Indian economy, and many young people in India prove to be very entrepreneurial, and that sparks up the prospects for Indian growth. The second one is digitalization, as well as more broadly investment in research, development, and innovation. What India has done with the public digital infrastructure is remarkable. We call on many on other countries, please go and learn from India and move in that same direction. The fact that India sent a spacecraft to the moon, I told Prime Minister Modi, impressive as it is, even more impressive that he did it at the cost of 74 million only. I know that here in India, you compare this with the cost of a movie of sending something to space
Which
versus
is
what you
terrible,
actually have
yes.
done. So there is that very strong drive for the country to innovate. There is also a great deal of attention paid to another resource, women.